Hi, and welcome to episode 13 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown on Instagram, Ravelry, Pinterest, and it's the name of my Etsy shop. I'll never remember all of that. And we have a Ravelry group, which you can find by searching for Give Me a Crown in the Groups tab. Today is Monday the 2nd of November 2015 and I'm recording a bit later in the afternoon than normal because I flew in from Dubbo in the central west of New South Wales a couple of hours ago, and I'm hoping that I can get this recorded before it gets dark, and there's a storm rolling in as well, so fingers crossed, and we'll see how we go. And I'll share a little bit about my travels later on in the acquisitions and at the end of the episode, because I got the chance to visit a yarn shop and pick up a few goodies. One thing I wanted to mention was that last week I had spoken about Renan Ollie, which is an Australian indie yarn and fibre dyer, and I said that she was based in Melbourne, but she's actually based in Adelaide, so I just wanted to correct that. And so this week's episode is going to have some knitting, but not that much because I've been away for 4 days and didn't get much done, but there are quite a few acquisitions. So getting on to the works in progress, is the first one is my Sounion socks, or Sounion socks, which is a free pattern by Kristen Finlay from Skein Yarn, and I was up to the heel last week, and I've done a few rows of the heel, so not much to talk about there, but I made a little bit of progress. Next up in works in progress is my sock yarn blanket, so this has had a bit more work. I put 5 new squares in here. So I put one which was my own hand dyed yarn. I put one which is the Hiet de Garn Safari sock, which I made socks for my niece out of, that I've been showing in the last few weeks. I've got one which I think is a Drops Fable sock yarn, and that one I pinched from my mum. I went through her yarn stash, and she used to knit a lot when I was younger, and then she did a lot of machine knitting, and she mainly knit jumpers, and I don't recall her ever knitting socks, but apparently she knit socks when my brother and I were young. And when we went to Finland earlier this year, she she saw that I was knitting socks, and she picked up some needles and started knitting socks, and she's since knit I think 4 pairs of socks now, but she could remember everything, how to do a heel flap and turn and all that. So yep, so I pinched some yarn from her, and then this is another yarn of hers that I pinched that she's knit some socks from, and I think this was a Finnish yarn called Rosa Nauha, and they when you purchase their yarn, some of the proceeds go towards cancer research. And then one more, which was another yarn that she's knit socks from, and I think that's an Arnie and Carlos Regia yarn, and I pinched a few more small amounts of yarn to do some more squares. And she has a jeweler's scale, so I was able to measure down to the 0.1 of a gram, and each of those normal sock weight yarns, I was finding that I was using 4.8 or 4.9 grams per square, so it was good to figure that out because my own scales only go to a full gram, and that was fun to experiment with. My next work in progress is my Arctic Texture socks, and I haven't had much progress on them, but that's how they're looking at the moment. And I've got a little tube for my DPNs, which I got from Knit Picks. Yeah, Knit Picks when I placed an order, and I didn't realise that they're just cardboard tubes. There was 2 in the packet, and to be honest, especially putting them into a backpack, they don't travel very well, so I think I need to make myself a DPN cozy. But I'm working these up on 2mm, that's US 0 needles, and I'm about ready to start increasing for the gusset on these. And I'm doing these as part of the Aussie Knit Along that's going on in the Give Me a Crown group, and because the designer Linda Pomeranke is an Australian based designer, and there's a few other people in the group who are knitting these. And over the weekend I haven't had a chance to check up on all the chatter that's been going on for the Aussie Knit Along, but I'll do that once I've finished recording. It looks like there's been a lot of conversation and some more finished objects, so I'm looking forward to checking those out. My next work in progress is that I mentioned last week that I wanted to make a pouch for my grandmother for her upcoming birthday, and I wanted to do some colour work just to get a bit more practice in. And I've made this little pouch, so at the moment it's curling over, and then on the back it just has a sort of a basic alternating colour pattern. I've knit this, sorry about the noise, from some Modavira merino yarn. I think this is an 8-ply. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's an 8-ply. And the other one is a 4 Seasons, but that's just the company that these are made for, Spotlight, just changed the name of them at some point, so technically they're the same yarn. And the pattern that I'm using for that pouch is from a Finnish book called Perinteiset lapaset, which means traditional mittens, by Anna-Carolina Tetri. And this has a lot of different traditional Finnish mitten patterns, and it explains what region the patterns are from. So this particular one, so this is a mitten, and it's called the Leppävirtalainen Lapanen, and I'll write that there. But it's a pattern that has been around since the 1900s, with some variations on the colours that have been used. And one thing that I noticed was that I'd looked at the photo and thought, I really like that, and I'd do the back of the pouch with this, and then the front with a bit of this. And then I started knitting. I did Judy's Magic Cast On for some odd reason, so it was a little bit hard to actually start working in the round, because I was using Magic Loop and it was a little bit tight to just start making up a tube. But I'm happy that I did that. My other alternative, I guess, would have been to knit a tube and then stitch it closed afterwards with mattress stitch or something like that. But I think it turned out okay. But so I started knitting from the chart, and then I was thinking, this looks a little bit different to the photo, and I realized that in the chart this alternating pattern shows as 1 by 1, so 1 green, 1 beige coloured stitch, whereas in the photograph it's 2 stitches of each colour alternating. So somebody's made a boo-boo with the chart, and that's going to remind me to always compare a chart to a photograph in future. And with the chart itself, it doesn't have any row numbers. Not that it really matters for me, but that's I like to see charts with row numbers. And then they're also quite small, so I thought about photocopying and then writing down how many stitches I had in between different parts, but I just ended up knitting, and it was a fairly quick knit because it's so small. But yeah, I definitely, with charts, I like to see row numbers and stitch numbers and things that just help to knit quickly without having to stop and pause and count. So that's that. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to sew up a little fabric pouch, which I can pop in there, and then I'll stitch on a zipper. And I think I have to send this off this week, so I'll just take some photos and I'll show you the finished pouch next week through photos. But I think it looks... So I like the fact that it's got a traditional finished pattern on it. And then she can put some small items in there. And then my acquisitions. So on Friday morning I flew into Dubbo, and then my mum lives about 45 minutes drive from there, so she's about 350 kilometres, which I think is about 260 miles, something like that, from Sydney. But I don't have a car, so I have to fly out there every now and then to visit. And we then decided on Saturday to drive 150 kilometres, which is about 2 hours worth of driving towards the coast, to go to a town called Rylstone and visit a yarn shop. And Rylstone is about 240 kilometres northwest of Sydney, but yeah, my mum's quite used to doing long drives, and so to her the idea of driving 2 hours to go to a yarn shop and then 2 hours back again isn't too much of an issue. So I was happy to go, because I've been wanting to check out the shop for a while, and I'd been thinking about trying to make my way up from Sydney somehow, but it was nice to be able to go with a car, and it was pouring rain for most of the trip, so it was good. So we went to the Convent and Chapel wool shop in Rylstone, and it's a cute 2-room wool shop. They have a great selection of yarns, much better than what I've seen in Sydney. So they have both some local yarns as well as international yarns, and they also had great supplies, knitting needles and stitch counters and drop spindles and fibre and everything. So it was a bit of a dream yarn shop, and I could have been in there for hours and hours, but yeah, I would have ended up spending a lot more than I did, and I had a bit of a budget, so I'll show you what I found. The first thing that I'll show you is some fibre, so I'll do my normal muting after while I'm showing the fibre, and then I'll talk about it. So those fibres, 2 of them were from Ashford, and they're merino silk slivers, 80% New Zealand merino and 20% silk. They also had some other fibres there, but these were the ones that sort of the grey and the brownish colours were ones that that I was most drawn to, so I thought, even though I've been planning to try out other fibres, that they were the ones that I'm going to be able to knit up with sooner. So I got those, and then the other two were from Glenora Weaving and Wool, and they were also merino silk, but again, they're colours that I wanted. So yeah, I think for when I want to play around with some different kind of colours, then I'll order them online. But it was nice to be able to pick up a few and save on postage by buying them in person. I also picked up some higher sharps, and I haven't found anywhere in Sydney that actually stock these. And these are 2.25mm US ones that are the 6-inch version, or 15cm. I really like using the shorter DPNs when I'm knitting socks. I used to knit with the 8-inch or 20cm needles, and now I find that they just feel too long and I feel like I'm going to stab myself in the eye, so I was happy to pick those up. Next, I found just some detachable stitch markers. In Sydney they're expensive to get just a small quantity, so these were $2, so I'm happy to have those. And then I was trying to look for some local yarn, and they didn't really have colours that were singing to me, but I thought that I would get this 8-ply Mudgee wool, super soft, super fine, and it feels wonderfully squishy and soft, and I think this could be a nice 8-ply shawl or a hat, but most of the colours were probably brighter than what I would want to use. They didn't have any browns or greys, so I picked this one up just to get something local. So Mudgee is a town that's about, I think it was about 45 minutes drive from Rylstone, and we drove through it on the way and just stopped in there briefly, but it was very busy and it was raining, so we didn't stay there too long, and I've been there before. So, but yep, some local wool. And then I might have squealed when I saw that way, which way? That way. Some Madeline Tosh, and this is a unicorn tail in the purple basil colourway, and I haven't seen any Madeline Tosh in any Sydney yarn shop yet, so I had to have it, just one. And I'll put this into my blanket, and then probably I might be able to use it as some colour in a shawl or something. But it's a purpley black colour, and this one is the base is Tosh Merino Light, and it's 52 yards or 47 meters. So it's very pretty, and my mum thought it was a little bit strange to buy just one little piece of yarn, but she really liked my sock yarn blanket, so I have a feeling that she's going to be starting one at some point. And then my final purchase was this beautiful skein. So this is Hedgehog Fibres, and this is a 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon in the Malice colourway. And again, Hedgehog Fibres is not something that I've seen in any of the Sydney yarn shops, and the lady at Convent and Chapel was saying that they actually get in colours that sort of unique colours and things, so they get quite a few orders from them in order to like international orders from them to send back overseas because they have colours that you can't get elsewhere. So this is the first time that I've had any hedgehog fibres, and it's got beautiful browns and reds and a little bit of blue, and that's definitely going to be something for me when I knit it up. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So that's that. That was my haul from the yarn shop, and there was definitely a lot more that I would have loved to have picked up. There was some white gum wool with an Australian yarn company. There was some of that, and there were other Australian yarns that I've never even heard of before, and they had cute displays and drop spindles that I mentioned, and it was fantastic. We also stopped in Dubbo at their arts and crafts shop on Friday before heading out to my mum's, and they had a spinning group going, and it's the first time that I've actually seen a bunch of people spinning away at the same time. They all had small travelling spinning wheels. I don't even know if the official term is traveller or if that's a brand name, but they were all spinning away, and I had a chat to them, and they had a small spinning wheel for sale, and I stared at it for a while and contemplated it, but I'm going to make do with what I've got for now. But maybe on my next trip out there I'll pop in and see what wheels they have. But the lady there was also saying that she makes up Lazy Kates and bobbins and what have you, so that might be where I can pick up those when I'm next up there, probably around Christmas time. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and my mum's property has a few paddocks, and they let their neighbours pop the sheep into the paddocks just to keep the grass mown. And I'll put some video at the end of the sheep. They're very friendly and lovely. They're a self-shearing or self-shedding variety, so they are bred for meat, unfortunately, but they're super cute, and I didn't manage to get any of their fleece. They just drop it and scratch it off onto the fence posts and what have you, so they kind of look a little bit patchy at the moment, and but they're super lovely and always coming up and bang and everything. So I'll include a bit of video of them at the end. So I think that's pretty much it, apart from the Aussie Knit Along, which is running in the group up until the end of November, and it's just to encourage people to try out some Australian yarn or Australian designed patterns, and there's quite a few entries already in there, and I was meant to show the prizes this week, but I forgot in my little mad rush this afternoon. So there is a skein of yarn from Atelier Yarn and Design, and some other prizes, so I'll make sure that I include them next week. And that also reminded me that I have promised to show how I use double pointed knitting needles, what my hold is on them, and so the way that I do it, I don't have to drop my yarn as I switch from one needle to the next. So I'll see if I can actually rig up a way to record a video of that before the next episode, and then I'll include that on there. And hopefully this week's a little bit calmer, just being at home, so stay tuned for that. And that's it. So I'll leave you with the sheep video, and I hope to see you in the Ravelry group, and drop by and say hello, and I'd like to see you get involved if you have some Aussie yarn or an Australian pattern that you've been meaning to cast on, and you might be able to win a prize. Okay. Sorry, I'm just yeah, it's been a whirlwind today. Getting up early and rushing around and driving 45 minutes across to the airport and flying along in a little plane and hoping that the thunderstorm doesn't hit just before landing, which thankfully it didn't. And I think there's going to be one this afternoon. So on that, I'll leave you, and I'll see you soon.